Fora TV. The world is thinking.
So good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming out here tonight, for spreading the word, bringing your friends and connecting, and taking a moment to reconnect our community or communities that have worked along the way. I'm Rains. I helped start the Berkeley Mac user group, BMUG, way back when. I recognize a few BMUG members out there. I love these cyber salons. My wife Betsy and I met at one of these. Sylvia has been doing such a great job at building community here, and the Hillside Club is such a great space that it just seemed like, hey, when I ran into Bill, 2 months ago, and he mentioned, hey, well, it's the 25th anniversary. I'm like, hey, well, there's no public event scheduled. Well, I guess it's up to us to make it happen, to bring the community out there.
Thank you.
And we did it. I feel like my role here tonight is mostly just to try to bring out some of the stories to help people connect, to try to help everybody remember. We've got a lot of stories in the room, so let's not try to go too long on any one of them. The HyperCard 25th, hashtag HyperCard 25th, is a tag you can use if you're tweeting about the event. It's live streaming at fora.tv, so people can follow there for friends who couldn't make it tonight. And I want to especially thank Infinite Canvas for the pizza and refreshments. Chris, thanks so much. Alacrity Software. I love what they're doing, bringing the HyperCard ideas forward on the iPad, and lots of people here have brought ideas in many different realms. Bill, what was this all about? Well, this HyperCard thing. How did it happen?
Well, I thought the intention was to try to, at Apple I built tools to empower creative people, even MacPaint. And I wanted to empower people to express themselves without requiring them to be heavy-duty programmers. In some way, it was kind of like liberating the programming of computers from the priesthood to the layperson. And I viewed what was later called HyperCard and was originally called WildCard. It's like a card up your sleeve, oh, I got a wild card here. I saw WildCard as being a kind of a software erector set, where you could plug together pre-made, prefab pieces and make your own kind of software without having to actually get down on the dirty and get a code generator and compiler and linker and, all that stuff. And what I liked was that a lot of people saw it that way and started making stuff. And I've thought that people who have a passion about a particular area, when they're given a tool that they can express that, something beautiful happens. It's very different taking somebody who has already programming skills and trying to instill in them a passion. It's easier to find somebody who's already passionate about something and liberate them to express it. And so that's, I think, what HyperCard was really about. It got named HyperCard because Apple was in a suit with a company who had made something called the WildCard. The WildCard was a card for the Apple II, a hardware physical card that attached two hard drives, two floppy disks on it, and it did a just nibble-to-nibble straight copy. It would defeat any copy protection. And so Apple was trying to shut that down because it would make it really hard for their developers to sell product. And so they were in a suit with them, and they couldn't very well buy the name WildCard from them while they were still suing them. So they said, come up with another name. And Chris Espinosa called it HyperCard.
Behind you, I found that's the wild card.
Ah, cool. The real wild card, huh? But to this day, the 4-character signature on a HyperCard stack is WL. The creator is WILD. No.
Is it wild?
Is it wild? Yeah. So that's because it was going to be WildCard. And, the web wasn't there. And I sort of see, in retrospect, looking back, that HyperCard was kind of like the first glimmer of a web browser, but chained to a hard drive. You got stacks of cards, well, it's like pages on the web, and you could put text and graphics on them, and you can put links that take you some other place. But because there wasn't really widespread use of the web yet, it was kind of limited there. And I view that maybe the biggest impact that HyperCard has had is actually not on the HyperCard stacks that people made, but how it's shifted people's lives and how it's influenced the development of further things. Like the designers of Mosaic said that HyperCard was a great inspiration to them. And so I think, the biggest expression of the success of HyperCard really is in how we now have this whole World Wide Web. There was a little difference that HyperCard was always an authoring environment, never just a browsing. I didn't separate the guys who consume the information from the guys who create it. And I was open source before open source was cool, because you could open up any HyperCard stack, any button, and look at what it does inside. I mean, the primary requirement of the HyperTalk language was that it be readable by somebody that could look at it and see what was going on. Oh, on mouse up, go to next card. Somebody could see that and maybe modify it a little bit. So it was, every HyperCard stack that you got had buttons and things in it, and people learned from each other, and it was kind of like a open source programming environment because people exchanged HyperCard stacks. It was sort of GitHub before GitHub.
I remember Rhys Jones, BMUG's founder, when first talking about it, and he was getting into commercial ventures at the time with Farallon. He was concerned, but because it's all open, people can see your proprietary secrets. Eventually, he learned about externals and said, okay, we can bury stuff over there. But
hide it in an X command or an X function.
But I'm curious about how this got out the door at Apple, and how do you get a computer hardware company that's making productivity software to communicate this?
Well, my friend Don Denman, he wrote this beautiful Mac Basic, and he worked on it for several years, and it was really wonderful. It didn't even have, you don't have to have line numbers, and it had local variables, and it had indentation, and it was really a beautiful language. And he came to me one day saying, "Bill, help me. They're screwing me. They're not going to ship this." And Microsoft had played hardball and said, "Well, we're not going to renew the license for AppleSoft in the Apple II ROMs unless you give us Don Denman's Basic." They got it, and they shelved it. They didn't ever do anything with it. They just wanted to squash it because it was so much better than what they had that it would have been really embarrassing. Well, Don came to me, and I went to Steve, and hey, this is not fair. It's not right. This guy worked really hard for several years and did beautiful work, and he just kind of said, "Well, it's too late. It's already a done deal. All the contracts have been signed, and it's too late." And so I was thinking about, well, now I have some ideas, and I actually went to Apple and I said, well, maybe it's time for me to go be an independent developer. I'll write for Apple. I love what Apple's doing, but maybe I need more control over the results of what I do. And so I ended up, and Apple said, "Oh, no, we don't want you to leave. You're an Apple fellow. You're an inspiration," all that stuff. And I had a lot of good friends at Apple. I liked being at Apple. But what we worked out was something where I would take a leave of absence, where I take no money from Apple while I worked on this. And they were under no obligation to buy it because they were always worried, well, if they do something, maybe that'll drive some developers away that want to do something similar. And so I said, well, here's the deal. I'll just make it really good, and you have the right of first acceptance. We settled on a date and said, okay, on this date, it'll be done, and if you like it, here's the agreed upon financial arrangement, and was a certain number royalty per copy with a cap. And if you don't like it, just say no thanks. You don't have to do anything. But then it reverts to me, and it's my problem to get out into the world. And so I wasn't going to be Don Denman. And part of the agreement that I negotiated, because it was an exchange medium. Like, how could you have... You want people to be sharing stuff. They all have to have the software that it takes at least to play it, but hopefully to be able to author it also. So I worked out an arrangement with Apple that it would be bundled free, be in the box with every Mac, and I took less of a royalty because of that. That was a gift that I made, and they were obligated to bundle it for at least 2 years. At the end of those 2 years, they got greedy and said, well, we're going to split it into the player and the authoring environment and sell the authoring environment, and they made more selling that authoring environment. It made more than 20 times what they paid me when they sold it through Claris. But it killed it because all the schools and stuff, they didn't have money to go and buy creative writing stuff from, if it's free, so everybody would use it. And kids would make beautiful little stacks. And I saw the whole thing as an authoring environment, not as, like a web browser, or, well, we didn't know about the web then, but I saw it as something to empower people to express themselves in an interactive form.
And lastly, before we open up to other stories, how were you surprised by the reaction? What have people done with it that has exceeded your expectations, or? Sure,
I saw some beautiful stuff that people made. Bob Stein did his wonderful stuff with Voyager, and there were one of my psychiatrist's wife was Amanda Goodenough, and she wrote this beautiful set of little stacks called Inigo Gets Out. Inigo was her little black cat. And what I saw in that was not somebody with a lot of technical expertise, but somebody with a lot of heart and being able to kind of given a tool that they can express something. And I think that's, hey, I haven't seen these slides. Inigo Gets Out. Amanda Goodenough. Good, I got her name right after 25 years. I saw a lot of cool stuff. Somebody made an X command that would execute SQL instructions over network connection.
And this is a plug-in for HyperCard, basically.
Right. There was always kind of an escape route. What if they don't have the part that you need to build this thing? You go to Lego and they've got all these parts, but they don't have everything. There was this way you could kind of go to a machinist and get a part made for you, and that would be an X function or X command, some harder to write code, but that was less restricted. And people wrote one that would allow people to access SQL databases, and all kinds of beautiful stuff came out of that. Constantly monitoring stock on hand of inventory and things like that. And I think, wow, I didn't imagine it would be used in any kind of a real-time monitoring situation. There were some beautiful video disc ones that worked together with a 14-inch video disc. Anybody remember that format? Blu-ray's almost dead. It's all downloads today. I don't know why they struggled so much over the different high-def formats when they were all going away anyway. But there was one for the, I think, American Gallery of Art, one of the National Gallery of Art.
Yeah.
The HyperCard stack would have information about the artist, but as you were clicking through, you were calling up frames on this huge library of art. I think it was one of those constant angular velocity ones where they could still frame, and so they could have like 50,000 single color photos that could be brought up and really have almost a whole gallery's worth of art there. There was another one I really liked that was, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but he was a professor, I think, up at San Francisco. He did music, Robert, what was his name? Anyway, he wrote this Beethoven stack, and he was really interested in teaching music and using Beethoven for an example. Like if you want to say what a glissando is, you got to play one and do this, that, or the other thing. So he used just a CD that was, man, you've got everything. Wow. Good for you.
The web. It's all live on the web.
Oh, you didn't have this all prepared? You're just searching.
Keep going.
The new library skill is Google. Knowing advanced searching in Google is really important. Anyway, there were lots of, I thought of them, some of the stacks that I was most interested in were stacks that were really kind of ugly, but they did exactly what this person needed. And there's no way in hell a programmer ever would have been interested. There wasn't a market to write that for. But this guy had to do something with his astronomy thing. He had to do something to help him point his telescope. And he knew what he needed. He wasn't a programmer, but he could make it. And some of the stacks did not have a lot of aesthetic polish. I think I used to say that some of these stacks only a mother could love, but those mothers loved them. So I guess that reminds me that it really, I'm a populist. I want everybody to be empowered. I think the more people that are empowered, and particularly those that have passion about something and they want to share it with other people. That's, I think now we've got much better tools than HyperCard ever was. But that was a lot of the intention, is that people could express themselves and share what their passion. I saw one, let's see if you can find this one. I saw one that she taught kanji. And the way it did is, so like the symbol for man looks like that. I remember that after all these years because a little man ran across, and as he was jumping, he paused and became that. And so this were just a set of cards that did a card flipping animation. But for me, the little animation helped me to remember that.
After,
what are some of the coolest stacks that you liked?
Well, I just remember so many. I really, the one main one I developed was for the BMUG PD-ROM. It's shareware CD, and using a stack as an index to it with screenshots of each and descriptions and the searchable database. I think just the ability to do that to me is the authoring ability, to manage my own contacts and information and.
And you wrote that yourself, right?
With others in BMUG. Stephen Howard collaborated with me on that. But yeah, the ability, I was around programmers without being so much a programmer myself. And so HyperCard was one of the tools that really opened it up for me. And that and FileMaker really got me going with different things. But before we open it further, after Apple and the metaphor of the stack and this idea of something you can click on, I see several people here who joined you at General Magic, and it seems somewhat HyperCard-like, your interface there. Can you say what that was about, since it was an orphan tree of development, an orphan branch?
One piece of stacks that I think is one of the most ambitious ones that I'm really pleased with is one that my wife, Sue Atkinson, wrote. I'm a nature photographer, and I sell big canvas prints in galleries, and we have to keep track of inventory, equipment depreciation. There are all kinds of tax stuff we have to deal with, and she just sat down and wrote HyperCard stacks to manage it all, keep it all track, and they work beautifully, and they do exactly what we need. And she's looked at trying to do it on QuickBooks and looked at trying to, other things, and no, this does what we want. And if it doesn't, she modified it a little, and then it does. And so I think that is one of the HyperCard stack examples that I'm most proud of. I didn't write any of it. She wrote it all. and she runs the business end of Bill Atkinson Photography. Now, Sue is here, and I met her while working on HyperCard. She has a story to tell that she had an opportunity to work somewhere at the French Riviera, or she could come to work at Apple. And she somehow found out that if she came to work at Apple, she'd get to work with me. And somehow she chose me over the French Riviera. And so Sue was the technical lead of the quality assurance team. And I had a deal with I wrote all the software at home. I cannot concentrate with other people buzzing around. It just doesn't work for me. It's always been that way. It's been that way when I wrote QuickDraw, when I wrote MacPaint, when I wrote HyperCard, PhotoCard I'm working on now. I need to focus. I can't be in a busy room. So I worked at home. But I had a deal with my testers. If you can make a bug happen in front of me, I promise to fix it within 24 hours. So I kind of threw down a little gauntlet, because I knew the hard part is how do you make it happen? Well, she was very crafty. She got bugs that other people found, and she figured out how to reproduce them on her computer. And then at 6 p.m., she'd bring them all to my house, and we'd go through a stack of bugs, and we would reproduce them. Because she'd reproduced them on hers, she could do it on mine. I'd find the bug and fix it. Next, check them off, and when we're all done with the bugs, we'd, play a game of Focus or go out to dinner. And so I kid around that she brought me so many bugs that I married her, and 25 years later, we're still together. And furthermore, she's still my top quality assurance person. She just found some really cool bugs in my PhotoCard app that I'm doing a new version that's coming out in a few weeks, and she's still very sharp. I'm grateful.
Bill, since you mentioned, running your business with HyperCard, I know some people who do it. Key, would you like to say something about Kagi? And
Hold on.
use the mic.
Here, have a mic.
So the people who are remote can hear and see.
So,
and please stand up.
I'm Key Nethery. I started Kagi, and I still run it. And
I've bought software from Kagi many times.
I would almost bet that I have a credit card from everybody in this room. I would bet.
Yeah, but mine are all expired.
So I first started automating stuff. I would take HyperCard and Apple scripts and basically just sort of automate stuff like crazy. And those initial stacks, they are long gone. But I still have a set of machines that are running Tiger with a virtual disk, which you can run HyperCard on. And they sit there and they use a SQL X command to go hit the database, see if there's something that's been changed, and if it has, pull it down, do something to it, and put it into the next state. And so I've got a little state machine, and they don't need to run fast, they don't need to run quick, and
but they need to run reliably, and if you haven't touched them in a long time, they probably still work.
Yeah, exactly. So, thank you. My business would not have been created without HyperCard. So thank you.
Key, at its peak, how many did you have running?
Let's see. I've got 8 little Mac Minis they're all working together and working in the background.
We're kind of keep Sue's G5 alive because it's the one that runs all the PhotoCard, all the photography business stuff, and all our new Intel Macs won't run HyperCard.
Yeah. You can get those really cheap these days. Anybody else out here still doing interesting things with HyperCard today, or what are you doing what were you doing with it that got you excited? Over here, Sylvia? And please stand up and introduce yourself.
I'm Dan Gamaldi, and I have Cradle of the Sun stained glass in San Francisco in Noe Valley. I use HyperCard every day. It runs my business. It's my point of sale, prints out the receipt, goes to the inventory, gets the real name instead of the little shorthand I use when I start the receipt, deletes one item or however many. If it's below the minimum, it goes and makes my my shopping list, comes back and I have my checkbooks, everything is run by HyperCard, and I couldn't do without it. Thank you very much.
And
It's custom software.
and what brought you to HyperCard? Was it just that?
I started out with Mac Lion, which was
Lion,
a waste.
wow.
And most of my info
Early
goes
database.
back to 1988, so that's when I started, and I'm still using some of this. And every time I need to make an adaptation, it's simple. Just go in, do it, change it. You know, you think of a new idea, go do it. And I've been running the business with that ever since. You know, it's just because it was so easy to do.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see you back here.
Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Smith. I'm at Google now, but I was lucky to work at General Magic, and before that at Apple Japan. And I was going to say two things. One is, it's fun to see the old General Magic screen up there because, you know, we're talking about HyperCard's influence onto General Magic, but then there's sort of the General Magic influence onwards. And one thing that not everyone knows is that a fabulous young guy graduated from Michigan and drove out and joined us named Tony Fidel. And he went on to create the iPod with Steve and the heritage for the iPhone.
He's a General Magic graduate.
Yeah, so Tony was with us at General Magic right out of school. And then the other point of heritage that's fun is the Android device. Andy Rubin was at General Magic. Then his next wave was Danger, of course, and then on into Android. So lots of the things that we're using today, these guys, we were all young people working with Bill and Andy and others at the time. The second thing, just to sort of an homage to HyperCard, I was lucky to work at Apple Japan in Tokyo after finishing school. And one day we got this call from NHK, which is like the BBC. If you don't know Japan television, it's the dominant TV player. And they wanted to take over the whole day on the spring equinox and call it Hypermedia Day. And so all programming except the news and the drama, like soap opera, was going to be replaced by Hypermedia. And Bill came and opened the show with a monk from Kyoto and then together. And then every single show of the day was HyperCard based in some form, except a couple other things from other players that were trying to be like it. But one of my favorites was this teacher in Toyama, Japan, who had built a bunch of HyperCard stacks and getting kids programming, very logo relevant. And then he was communicating across Farallon Technologies with some kids in the island nation of Britain, sharing stacks back and forth, and lots of other game shows and things that they did with HyperCard. So it was a pretty fun day.
I remember the Japanese kids were surprised that the English ones didn't wear top hats.
Yeah.
Steve, you were writing about HyperCard and different things people were doing as well. Steve, Michael, Sylvia, here, let's get the mic. The column with Eric for Mac Week magazine.
I wrote a HyperCard column Mac Week for a long time. When it first came out, I wrote a little importer routine that I put up on CompuServe and said to people what it would do is read a comma delimited file and make a stack out of it. And I said, if you like it, send me some money. And I started getting all these checks, which was really, really nice. And then I commercialized that product. But I totally, when you're talking about the Robert Stein thing on Beethoven, I did a Bob Dylan project where I made a follow the bouncing ball so it would like sense what CD was in there. And it would show the lyrics and show what line he was on, because not all of us could understand him. But anyway, I have did lots of stuff with HyperCard. It was really fun. Thanks.
Did you write anything?
Dan gave me my first real job at Mac Week magazine in the newsroom, and I think that's probably where I was at the HyperCard launch at the Boston Macworld Expo. So I learned about it there, but certainly
25 years and one day ago.
Most people learned about it, many, I imagine, learned about it from Mac Week and its early coverage.
Yeah, we had I guess the Scoop article, and it was Wild Card. You don't happen to have that picture?
I don't think so.
But for me, I was sort of brand new to the Mac community. Came over from the PC world and got this job, and this was the big story that was sort of our first 3 or 4 months. And so it just, for me, it was a great introduction to the creativity and the, what was different about this community than, what I've been used to. So that's my little story. Thanks.
I was down at your house one day and interviewed you for a magazine called CD-ROM Review. And that was really a fun afternoon. I remember that.
Thank you. Was that when I lived in Los Gatos?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Be sure to introduce yourself.
Hi, Glenn Shires. I worked with Bill at General Magic. And the picture behind you is amazingly similar to HyperCard. HyperCard really inspired what we did with Magic App in the sense of it was very easily programmable, and it was also very easily scriptable. And basically, it was taking HyperCard, putting it in a mobile format, and also adding email to it, which is kind of making it more mobile, more networkable. And it's really fascinating to see how that was kind of the beginning of some other things that are very easily scriptable and networkable. So it's really interesting the way HyperCard has kind of invaded technology from all sorts of different angles.
I did bring my HyperCard manual.
Yay.
I'm Angela Hay. I worked at General Magic. So I did bring my HyperCard manual, which is just the user manual, not the scripting part. And I did try and use it, but I decided that keeping my business cards in a box was a lot easier than typing in the names. And in the end, I went out and bought Fourth Dimension and wrote sort of real language to script my names and do funny things with them. But I would like to give a plug for Bill Atkinson's photo card, which is also sort of derived from further on from that, from the General Magic. One of the things you could do, if you see in the middle, there's a little postcard that you could send, and it put a stamp on it. And Bill Atkinson not only has his head on the stamp as an option, but he also allows you to put stamps on the back of the cards. And this is one of my favorite iPhone apps. And as someone mentioned, eBay also was started by a General Magic engineer.
Thank you, Angela. Angela is one of my large users of PhotoCard, and if you liked MacPaint, QuickDraw, and HyperCard, you really ought to check out PhotoCard. It's a free app, only runs on iOS. It's my latest art. I've been working on this for 3 years, and it gets smoother and slicker all the time. It's a free app that lets people. I'm basically trying to rescue the postcard, because our Twitter messages and our text messages, they're wonderfully communicative and immediate, but they are evanescent. They just scroll off and they're gone. And when you get a physical card, it's a tangible gift. It has an ongoing presence, like on a refrigerator. It kind of is still reminding you long after the emails and twits have scrolled off. The card is there, being there in your presence, and then it ends up being a long-term memory in a shoebox. And every one of these is printed. I've used my best knowledge. In order to do my fine art printing, I had to become a color management guru, and I've trained over 400 professional photographers in color management and Photoshop and printing. Anyway, I do perfect color, and I actually run a labor of love service behind the scene. And for the last 3 years, I've gotten up at 5 a.m. every morning to do what I call milking the cow. And one of my friends actually thought that I was talking about a real cow. I said, no, I just meant, get up in the morning and do the chores, right? And when I get up, I pull down all of the print and mail orders, and I do second-level address correction, and I generate intelligent mail barcodes that have a full 11-digit zip, and I put prepaid first-class postage on them. I lay them out into this giant PDF that's typically about 10 gigabytes these days, each batch. And then I FTP that to my printing partner that has a giant Indigo digital press. They get in at 6 a.m. That's why I have to get up at 5. By the time they get in, that's waiting in their queue. They put on the coffee and they run the cards. So I get first dibs on this multi-million-dollar printer, and they run the cards, and then they run them through hot laminator. It's all been a labor of love, like, oh my God, we're going to have to buy this laminator and pay out for the materials, and we're not going to raise the price. Basically, and then they get trimmed and driven to the main postal sorting station in San Jose. I've made it so that it's really fun and easy to make these. Now, I can show you on an iPad just because it's a little easier to see. You say, start a new card, and you can paste a photo or take a new photo or choose from album or choose one of my nature photos. There's 200 of my best nature photos included with the free app. It's a free app, and it's on the App Store. So you choose a picture, or you maybe paste one of your own. And here's a snapshot that I took when Sue and I were in Florence and Venice. This was in Venice. And I noticed this looks a little low contrast, so I touch Enhance. Much better. And Darken. Much better. Done. Turn it over. Choose a stamp. There's 200 colorful stamp designs. We spent a lot of money licensing artwork that people made. And so we'll choose, because it's Italy, we'll choose the Vitruvian Man here for the stamp design. And then you can address it to somebody. And here, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll address it to Sylvia Paul. And then you can write your message. Dear Sylvia, comma, new paragraph. How nice to see you at the HyperCard Salon, period. New paragraph. Best wishes, comma, Bill. And it'll take the dictation. Yeah, it's a little bit crooked. I would take a few minutes to polish that. I wonder what I'll do. And then I would decorate it a little bit with, and you can type too. There's 400 colorful stickers. And the idea is not to give you a few template pre-made cards from Hallmark and you just sign them and hand them over, but to give you an authoring environment to create custom works of art. So I'll choose a signing pen, a little cat, and maybe a nice magic hat. I'll move the signing pen there and the magic. I'll make the hat a little bigger. And to send that, all I do, now check the back. Yeah, that's the picture I want to send. Send that postcard by mail. It says, do you want to spend 2 credits? Now, it's posted. It's uploading the custom photo. It's received. So you don't have to do anything else. That puts it in the mail. So what people were saying is we have to let go of our old traditions like postcards in order to get with a program with mobile computing. And I say the other way around. Let's use our mobile technologies to bring back the old traditions, make it possible for you to make a custom, one-of-a-kind postcard and send it to your friends from your smartphone. It runs on an iPhone and an iPad and iPod Touch. The problem that I found is I thought, well, just based on my name, maybe 1% of iOS users would give it, kick the tires, give it a try. But there are 650,000 apps in the App Store, and I no longer work for Apple and can put something in a box as a free giveaway. I still give it away free, but I don't have the box to put it in. And so I've been at it 3 years. I only have about 160,000 users. 1% would be 4 million users. So people don't know about it. So give it a try. And I think it's some of my best work. I'm more proud of what I've done on this than what I did on QuickDraw, MacPaint, and HyperCard. Oof. It is a work of art. It's a labor of love. I don't do this for the money. I make more selling one print in a gallery than 1,000 cards. When you send a card to the U.S., it always costs less than $2, and international, anywhere in the world, for less than $3, including the postage, including the printing and lamination. Anyway, So I'm not sure, I guess I'm doing too much of a sales thing here. But
Well, I was.
this is where my current passion is. And if you liked what I did before, you ought to check this out.
Excellent. I was early to PhotoCard, and I started to say, oh, maybe I can use it for this, use it for that, but none of my images are up to the quality of the rest of it. So how do I, it definitely
Then use
has
some of mine.
Theme.
There's 200 of mine in it.
Exactly.
But here's our new Leaf electric car, an iPhone snap, and sent it right away. We were at Thanksgiving dinner, an iPhone snap, and send a thank you.
There you go.
Right there.
Excellent. I see more.
Kids took me out to In-N-Out Burger for Father's Day. I took an iPhone picture of this and sent it right away.
Snap and go. Bill, I see more hands out here.
Okay.
And people.
Bill was kind enough to sign my shrink-wrapped copy of HyperCard that I'm Harold.
First signature since I got this sling.
I'm Harold Mann. I was an early HyperCard adopter. I won't go into everything I did with it, but I will say it was probably the most creative I was in my career. It was at the very beginning of my career, and I was managing 100 computers at Chiat Day Advertising in San Francisco. And every morning, every computer would turn on, automatically check in with my computer over the network, download fonts. I had a whole intranet. I didn't know it was an intranet back then, but it turned out it was an intranet. I would copy files over. I would play sound files for girls in the office that I liked remotely. But what I'm struck with, it's sort of bittersweet because I'm realizing all these HyperCard stories are all almost folklore now, and we have none of the permanence that Bill is talking about here with the postcards. That's sort of a sad, aspect to HyperCard, and these poor folks who are probably praying that their computers don't die on them that are still using these products. So the permanence is something that is an interesting relic. But I'm struck with how creative I was, and I was creative because of the limitations and because of the relatively small set of tools available. I'm curious, two quick questions. One, were you constrained because of your delivery date on what you put in, or was that a conscious decision to limit the set of tools that were available to people in the product? And I'm also curious your thoughts on just sort of the way skeuomorphism is trending in the software world as it relates to Lion and some of the iOS products and the people in the community.
Okay, I'll try to answer those two. I think there are 2 or 3 or 5 questions. The first one about how did I choose what would be in and not, it wasn't really about deadlines. It was about what was needed in order to make a complete kit. You can't get an erector set that doesn't have any round things. It's not going to work. You can't make wheelie things. But there is a certain set of things that does make a complete and usable kit. And that's what I was always looking for, is this kind of the cleanest, simplest set of tools that would empower a lot of different things. And it isn't that I didn't put something in because we didn't have time, or I didn't put something in. We got the stuff in that we needed, and it was ready. So I was very happy with what we got in it, and it was a good set of tools. Now, would you explain your second question again? It seemed. Oh wow, the computers are a lot. Remember the Mac at that time was a 1-bit, not even grayscale, black or white. In fact, Apple made a grayscale scanner, 4-bit. And the first thing I did is use dithering algorithms to make it, and Sue and I worked on something together called HyperScan, a HyperCard stack that ran that scanner. But we do have a lot more to work with these days. We have a lot more, like many millions of times more computing power and storage, and so we do things we couldn't do before. I mean, I work with 80 megapixel images all the time, and on a Mac, remember, the whole machine was 1/8 of a megabyte. I love what's been happening with the Mac. It's been getting better and better. I love my Macs. I have a bunch of them. And I love what I just upgraded to Mountain Lion. I'm happy with it. I wish I could still run HyperCard. You know, there's a couple of computers we have that we save for that purpose, and we kind of kid each other that when one of those dies, we have to go on eBay and buy 10 more and put them in a closet. But I wish Apple had just kept it alive. At a point, they had a team of people working on it. Past when I left, I had left that, gone on to other things. Kevin Calhoun and his merry band were doing great improvements with color and with externals and calling web things. And but I guess at a certain time in Apple's life, Apple was really close to just plain folding, and they had to do some really severe pruning to keep the plant from dying, and they just sort of cut everything that wasn't essential and said, we're only going to do a few things and we're going to do them well. And HyperCard didn't make the cut. It wasn't essential, and so it kind of got abandoned.
By that time when the supercard went to its alternatives, finally, we were kind of addressing
There were clones out there.
Yeah, when you talk, they can't hear it. You were saying that a supercard, there was some...
for commercial availability by that point, which was to help relieve some of that missing.
Yeah, but it's not like having it in the box, you know.
Okay, we got a question over here.
Okay.
Hi, actually, my name's Lori Edwards, and I wanted to say that there are a lot of people that wish HyperCard was still running. I used to teach it in 1990. I taught a class called Designing Computer-Based Learning Environments, which I couldn't teach now because there is no environment or platform where I could take undergraduates with no computer experience, no programming experience at all, and bring them in and let them design things that they were passionate about teaching. And I just wanted to mention my favorite stack that someone designed was a credential student, and he wanted to make a stack that would help new teachers understand how to do classroom management. He didn't make a tutorial. What he made was a simulation, which said, you're at the front of the class, a student in the back starts throwing his pencil. What do you do? And then gave a tree. So it was a kind of an adventure game for classroom management, and it was the best way, I think, to understand, good and bad decisions in classroom management that I've ever seen. And the format, the platform of being able to make a decision and see obviously that's, simulations, make a decision and see the outcome. But there's no way that I could have a student now design something like that easily without a much steeper learning curve. So I'd love to see HyperCard running again.
Yeah. So the question keeps coming up again. People say, am I going to bring HyperCard back alive? No, I'm not going to happen. My plate is totally full. It's getting even fuller with more and more people using the photo card. Also, I don't own any rights to it. Apple owns all of the rights to it. However, the complete source list and source listing and binders and diskettes have been donated to the Computer History Museum. They were donated at the same time as QuickDraw and MacPaint. And I don't quite understand why, but QuickDraw and MacPaint were made available for free download. You can go there and download them now. And in the first 36 hours that they were downloaded, 75,000 people downloaded QuickDraw and MacPaint sources. And a lot of people wrote me saying, it's so cool to look under the hood at software that changed the course of my life. And I'd like people to look under the hood at HyperCard. The sources for it are waiting to be downloaded. I want to make, they're not of commercial value anymore. But they're a historical archive, and they mark a time. And I look forward to when anybody who wants to can go to the Computer History Museum website and download the source to HyperCard and look at it. I don't know. I think they got all the approvals from Apple Legal. But I'm not sure what's going on that. I was kind of naively hoping that on this 25th anniversary, that would be the momentous day when they would let everybody download it. 25 years later is a reasonable, waited period.
Chris has been doing some great stuff, taking the spirit forward of HyperCard and on the iPad and elsewhere. What for you? What was the inspiration? What got you to get it out there?
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, you sold me the Mac in 1984. It wasn't the machine, it wasn't the mouse, it wasn't any of that other stuff. It's that on the day in January 1984 when the Mac showed up at my local company and I sat down with Mac Draw, there was an elegance there that was absolutely amazing. There was a magic there of little details. I mean, it was years before anybody made a lasso that would actually wrap around things. That magic was what made me go, I'm getting rid of all this CPM stuff, all this basic stuff. I'm dedicating my career to the Mac. Literally that day, and it was Mac Paint. 3.5 years later, when you came out with HyperCard, I mean, I've been programming in Pascal and, had this big machine that tethered to a little small machine. Sounds like iPad and Mac. That was Elisa, and because that's how you had to develop for the Mac. But I dropped it all to really focus on HyperCard. I did that. Did you ever see the Apple TV studio? That you could program all the monitors and all that in the Apple TV studio, and there's archive.org has a video of it, but you could basically drag your monitor feed from the Berlin Wall and put it on this monitor and then move this audio feed there, point the satellites, all that kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Command would make all the solder connections?
But anyhow, I want to really praise the what you gave the artist. I am not an artist in that sense, a graphic artist. I'm an artist in a different sense. And the power that you gave them, if monks had Macs blew me away. An ego, all these little things that artists never before thought that they could, be part of this interactive world. That, I think, was one of the real wonderful ignition points of your work, and I really want to appreciate your starting it.
Wow, thank you.
Chris has also collected other testimony from Twitter from folks that couldn't be here tonight, and we'll have some of those up on screen as well. Oh, and you get Chris.
I think it's a really well-written article.
Yeah, Chris Espinoza, look up his blog posts that link some of the pieces together and provide some of the history, and he was managing the team at one point.
What's the 1.0.1?
I have to ask Chris. I don't know what it is. Heck, I'm 61, and this was 25 years ago. I can't remember that.
It's a long time ago. I'm Eric Alderman, and with Jim Edlin here and Tay Vaughn, we started the Hypermedia Group to do HyperCard development. So we really founded a company based on HyperCard and did a lot of work over 10 years. And at our peak, we had 45 people over there in Emeryville working on stuff. We did a lot of fun stuff, including the Apple TV stack with Chris back then. That was a lot of fun. And CDs for Apple, including a support navigator, which was a lot of fun. Very cool stack. And but I'm just trying to think of some of the funnest ones we did. We did a lot of work with early character-based animation, where we would custom build a font and then have a field, and then move that field around on the screen. So we did one for NetWare for Macintosh. It was a giveaway CD marketing, floppy disk. And we had a butterfly. It was a really cool butterfly animation that flew around the stack, brought you through the whole stack. And that was just done by building a custom font and then flipping it and moving it around. And we had a lot of fun with HyperCard. It employed a lot of people. We had a great, fun company there, and so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Who else here? Some different kind of story or some way it changed their life. What brought you here tonight? What's worth coming out on a Sunday night besides pizza?
I have a off-the-wall story. I'm Sylvia Paul, and I used to work for Software Ventures. We were a Mac developer, and I didn't have a car. I still don't have a car. And my boss, the head of the company, said, "Sylvia, you have to have a car." I was VP of marketing. So he got me to buy a company van. So I bought this Ford company van, and I found out about the HyperCard team. They were like the rock stars of the computing world in those days, like the Rolling Stones or something. They were wild. They got to make their own titles. It was the first time I saw people's cards where they made up their own titles. There was someone on the team who was like the code goddess or the HyperCard goddess.
Andy Hertzfeld was a software wizard.
Right. Anyway, I thought it was so cool, and I developed a crush on one of the guys on the team whose name I can't even remember anymore, and I wanted to go out with him one night. And I had my son, he was 4.5 years old at the time, and I was divorced, and it was my night to have a kid. So I made a deal with one of the young programmers at Software Ventures who wanted to use the company car. I said, "You can have the van if you take care of my kid for one night." And my son, thank God, doesn't remember this, but it was great. And I do remember that night, although I can't remember the guy's name. That's my story.
You traded the cow for 3 beans?
Bill, I found another picture from the archives.
Oh, yeah. This is in December 1983, just before the Mac shipped in 1984, January. And this is at Steve's house in, I think, Monteserino. And it had no furniture. It was just bare wood floors. And we were sitting there. And I loved the expression on his face. And I had a little more hair back then. But I guess this is a good time to talk about what Steve did to make me a great software designer. Steve believed in me. I think there's a huge power to that. I don't quite understand why he believed in me. There were other people who were smarter, who worked as hard, but he believed in me, and so it made me flourish. There was for about 3 years we were best friends. We'd go to dinner more nights together than not, and we discussed everything, wacko stuff, nothing to do with computers, but. Because he believed in me, that really let me flourish. I've noticed that the same thing happened when my mom believed in me, and that was important. And I think it's important how, in our personal relationships with other people, when you call something forth that's good in somebody, it magnifies it, and it really there's very high leverage to noticing and appreciating. And I'm seeing in his look there, he's appreciating the crazy ideas that I'm capable of.
Yes, thank you. That's kind of hard to follow. My name is Barbara Tien. I was product manager for the Mac Recorder at Farallon back in the day. Farallon was
I remember Farallon. Networking over...
PhoneNet connectors. PhoneNet connectors, indeed. Well, the Mac Recorder was the brainchild of Mike Lamoureux, who was a mathematician PhD student at Berkeley because he needed hardware to deliver his compression technologies. Very cool compression that would actually let you record your voice in here and hear it out the other end of a PhoneNet connector, which we thought was totally cool back then. So the Mac Recorder allowed us to put sound into the computer, and we were off and running and having a great time, and had the opportunity to bring in Steve Capps to do sound edit development for us, which we were all just in awe of the amazing wonders of sound edit at the time. I didn't even know what a product manager was at the time, but I was all kinds of different functions there, but I got to go to the Apple University Consortium meeting because I was sort of responsible for education. and was there in the audience, I don't know, it was like late July, something like that, before the Macworld show, when you did the first introduction to the Apple University Consortium about HyperCard. I was in tears. I was so excited because I could see what we could do if only we had this thing, this authoring tool that was in the box, in every single Macintosh, that let people do stuff with sound, and it was just breathtaking. So we went back and developed a sound recorder, which is a name that no one really quite put together, which allowed us in a HyperSound, which let us put sound right in directly into the HyperCard stack, which is one of those simple things of just make it stupid easy, and they will do it. And then all of a sudden we had people like Amanda Goodenough coming to us saying, oh, cool, I can make the little cat sounds. I can make the little sounds. And she did it with such artistry and beauty. It was just fabulous. And everywhere we went, we would have these artists coming to us saying, I was afraid of computers before, but look what I've been able to do. And, you know, that feeling of appreciation that I can do this was something that just followed us all around, and it's certainly taken me through my whole career. So, thank you, my friend.
I think it's a lot easier to take somebody with passion and give them a tool to express themselves than it is to give somebody that already have good tools and try to engender a passion in them.
Well, that's something that I certainly hope to carry with me the rest of what I do the rest of my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up front here.
When you talk, please hold the microphone close to your mouth.
Yes? Okay, hi, I'm Roger Wagner, and my short story is really just to thank you. I designed a program inspired by HyperCard called HyperStudio that ran on the Apple IIgs computer. So sort of took the time vector and pointed it back and put HyperStudio, sort of Andy Warhol's vision of HyperCard with all kinds of strange color and music and strange things, and put that onto the Apple IIgs. And I can say if this is 25 years doing some math, I guess that has changed every single day of my life for the last 23 years, up until this very moment, and many more to come, I hope. So thank you.
And it looks like it's still out there?
There it would be. The Google wizard strikes. Very good. Thank you. So that's just it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And people earlier were mentioning SuperCard, which I understand is still running on the current platforms. And Runtime Revolution, that's come out of that. What else? Live Code.
Yeah, that's actually, Live Code is probably the most complete sort of HyperCard on steroids. It's a lot more, it's not just HyperCard, but it will ingest a HyperCard stack, and it uses, I mean, if you're familiar with the HyperTalk language, you'll fit right into Live Code. Sue has been porting our photography stacks over to Live Code. And it's not as easy and approachable as HyperCard was. You can't just sort of walk up to it and have a casual relationship. You kind of have to dedicate a little bit into learning how to use a system. But it is a very powerful programming environment that is a lot like HyperCard, but a lot more powerful. And I'd say, you know, if you're looking for a HyperCard replacement, Live Code, which used to be called RunRev, be the place to go. They're good
let's
guys.
hear from Infinite Canvas. Are you a HyperCard replacement?
We're not a HyperCard replacement. I'm trying to really connect to the original spirit, which was, I think, you wanted to empower people. You wanted to, that is hard. Empowering people and giving them the tools to be able to start at a very basic level and just simply start adding buttons, and then add interactivity to that buttons, and then start making the buttons talk to one another and change. And that whole sort of discovery process was what was wonderful about HyperCard. It was also wonderful that it was just so easy to share with other people and have things that were just kind of, a little clunky. You didn't mind. You shared it because you thought it was cool. That's really the spirit that I'm trying to encourage with Infinite Canvas. Now, you can do HTML5, which means you can do JavaScript and all these sort of advanced things that advanced programmers want to do, and I want to bridge the very simple stuff that we've started and the advanced things in JavaScript. But it's more the spirit, the spirit of empowerment that I'm after. It is free, and the authoring version has been submitted to Apple. And then basically, we make our money off of in-app upgrades on the authoring. So you can author to a certain extent, but then if you start building something big, you'll pay an in-app upgrade of $2 or $3 to us. If you want to do super advanced things with lots and lots of templates, you can download some templates. But other than that, it's free. The only other thing I wanted to say is, we've got a lot of wonderful stories about HyperCard here in this room, and also in Twitter with the HyperCard 25th. I'm really looking for someone to maybe collect some of these stories and this background of HyperCard and how it inspired people, and put it together in an infinite canvas so that we can share with people this history and this wonderful background of what's been going on. Thank you.
Yes, and I'll just mention I've been working with Infinite Canvas for a bit, porting over this GroupWorks deck, the card deck you can see back there, ideas behind fun meetings and good group process, stuff that I've learned from BMUG and other people brought in from other modes of practice and organizing groups. And really, I'm now really looking forward to the authoring version being out there, because I see so many collections of things that wouldn't it be nice to get this out in a way that's native on the iPad and able to carry around, especially at Burning Man where I'm offline, and not able to just pull up everything on the web. And so I'm looking forward to that level, that spirit. That's what got me there with HyperCard. I remember when I was working at Mac Week magazine, and I was walking around with a Mac Portable, and I was like, okay, I'll type in the BART schedule so I can have a stack that can tell me when the next train is coming, rather than run for it. That's the kind of thing, just what's in your environment, and the idea that, the computer is now a tool that can help with that, to augment our reality, change our relationship.
That's great.
We have time for one more comment. Okay.
And people will be able to stay around a little bit afterwards for informal conversation.
Introduce yourself.
Greetings, my name is Jonathan Gibson, and the more I think back, I think what a debt of gratitude I know I owe you. And when I see Steve looking at you, and he empowered you, and you believed in all of us, because I can think of just dozens of projects over the 90s and late 80s where that was the glue that held together multimedia, and it was amazing with the X commands and X objects, and then a director later. But it's everything. My first project was working on the Guernica interface, and it was a HyperCard front end, and we got around the color issues by blasting a X command to the color and fake everybody out. Went to SuperCard later because we needed the color, but we were coloring, driving laser discs, and there were soft patches for all that Apple TV stuff you were working around with, just X commands and X objects. It was really phenomenal what that toolkit was, and I made a lot of money and did pretty well, and so,
Great.
My boy here, I noticed the kids, they're all into Minecraft and the mods, and there's a lot more facile than you may think the upcoming generations are with making these things malleable and endlessly massaging it in ways you don't expect. And they're a lot more astute than we might be giving them credit for. And anyway, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
HyperCard was a great environment for authoring interactive media. And there's a new one out now that I think is just the bee's knees. Apple's free iBooks Author will let you put together industrial strength interactive media with drag and drop, no programming. I think it's the closest thing we have today to what HyperCard was, but it's a lot more. You could drop a video into a thing and there it'll play, or drop a folder of JPEGs to get a slideshow and fold it all up into a book. And then the amazing thing, at the end of it, it's got a distribution arm. You publish it, and it goes out through the iBookstore. So if I were authoring interactive media today, well, I am. I have a book, an art book that I did, my fine art photographs of polished rocks. They look like abstract paintings. It's called Within the Stone, and I'm working on a electronic edition of it. And I'm using iBooks Author for that. I recommend looking into iBooks Author, and I have one piece of advice for anybody who wants to do iBooks Author. Sign up for a free iBooks Author developer account, and then you get access to all kinds of sample materials and additional documentation. Don't wait, don't download the software and screw around with it trying to build something before you contact Apple and say, I want to be a iBooks author user. Their support is really great. So when I think about creating interactive media now, I think about things like the fantastic flying books of Morris Lesmore, which is just totally a blow-me-away interactive media. Now, they put a lot of hard programming time into that. They didn't use iBooks Author. But for most people, they'll get a big chunk of what they could have gotten with just drag-and-drop programming. And I think that iBooks Author deserves a big shout-out. If you liked HyperCard, you really ought to check out iBooks Author.
I think Bill Atkinson deserves a big shout-out. Let's give him a hand.